In today's Explainer, we're diving into an ancient narrative that actually serves as a super gripping, highly relevant, modern case study in ethical decision making. We're looking at the story of Lot, right out of Genesis, chapters 11 through 19. Now, I know it's thousands of years old, but as you'll see in a minute, this text maps perfectly onto the crossroads we literally all face today when it comes to our careers, our relationships, and making moral compromises. I mean, let me ask you this. How often do we pick a job, a relationship, or even a new city to live in just because it looks incredibly shiny and perfect on the outside, while we completely ignore the toxic culture on the inside? It's a classic trap, right? Well, this explainer is going to break down exactly how falling for that shiny exterior can kick off a disastrous chain reaction, step by step. Section 1, Attraction and the First Choice. Let's look at exactly how this ethical divergence begins. So we start with a severe land shortage. Both Abraham and Lot have accumulated massive wealth and herds, and things are getting crowded. But Abraham steps up and literally delivers a masterclass in conflict resolution. As the older, more authoritative guy, he goes to his nephew Lot and says, "Let there be no strife between us. If you go one way, I will go the other." He completely prioritizes peace over his own preference, giving Lot the very first pick of the entire region. It's such a selfless, deeply ethical approach to a really tense situation. Okay, let's dive into this comparison because this is where the paths really diverge. Abraham values peace, trusts in divine direction, and actively avoids conflict. Lot, on the other hand, he looks out and sees the Jordan Valley. The text notes it was gorgeous, green, well-watered, almost like Egypt. So Lot chooses this visually stunning area and heads straight toward Sodom. But what's the catch? Well, the text explicitly points out that the people of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful. Lot saw the huge economic upside, but he totally ignored the moral bankruptcy of the people living there. It's exactly like taking a massive salary bump to work for a notoriously toxic company. Section 2. Ignoring the red flags. Let's see how one superficial, visually driven choice starts a really dangerous, compounding ethical descent. Let's walk through this timeline together. It is a brilliant illustration of what we call the slow fade. You know, ethical collapse rarely happens overnight. First, Lot moves to the fertile valley. Okay, fine. Next, he pitches his tent just near Sodom. But eventually, he moves and lives inside the city walls. And finally, because he's so woven into this volatile community, he gets captured in a regional war. It's a chilling progression. He didn't jump into the fire on day one. He just kept taking one small step closer to it until it literally consumed him. Sodom was notorious for extreme wickedness, blatant injustice, and violence. And yet, Lot stayed. He blew right past these massive, glaring red flags. It actually took a disaster, a regional war where an alliance of kings sacked Sodom and took Lot and his family captive to shake things up. And even then, it took a daring nighttime rescue mission by Abraham and his trained men to get Lot back. You would think, for sure, this near-death experience would be enough to make Lot pack up and leave that toxic environment forever, right? Well, that leads us right into Section 3, warning and destruction. The consequences of that slow fade finally catch up with him. As more time passes, things escalate. Sodom's sins of rampant injustice and violence grew so undeniably great that a divine judgment was locked in for the city. And the narrative suddenly accelerates into this truly terrifying night. Two angels arrive in Sodom, disguised as regular men. Lot, sitting at the city gate, insists they stay at his house for protection. But as night falls, a violent mob of the city's men surrounds the house, demanding to brutalize the guests. Lot steps out, desperately begging them not to do this, but the mob just turns right on him. It vividly, horrifyingly illustrates the absolute moral decay of the home Lot chose. Just in the nick of time, the angels pull Lot inside and strike the attackers with blindness so they can't even find the door. Then comes the definitive ultimatum. The angels tell Lot, God is going to destroy this city. Take your family and get out immediately. So Lot rushes out to his future sons-in-law to warn them, but here is the truly tragic detail. They thought he was joking. Lot had lived in this compromised, corrupted culture for so long that his words carried absolutely zero moral weight. He had lost all respect and influence, even within his own extended family. And amazingly, even the next morning, Lot hesitates. Think about that. He's still reluctant to leave his wealth and his home behind. Finally, the angels mercifully grab the hands of Lot, his wife, and his two daughters, and physically drag them out of the city. They are given explicit, desperate instructions. Step 1, save your life. Step 2, whatever you do, do not look back. And step 3, don't stop in the plains. Flee to the mountains. So they're running for their lives as fire and brimstone literally begin to obliterate Sodom and Gomorrah, destroying everything. Section 4, consequence of clinging to the past. Let's slow down for a second and look at the lethal cost of holding on to emotional ties to a toxic environment. As they are fleeing, tragedy strikes the family. Lot's wife disobeys that one direct command and looks back at the burning city. And the text states she instantly turns into a pillar of salt. Now, she didn't just casually glance over her shoulder, right? Her heart and her mind were still deeply, deeply attached to the wealth, the status, and the whole life she was leaving behind in Sodom. Her physical body was leaving, but her allegiance remained anchored in that toxic culture, and the consequence was absolute. So Lot and his 2 daughters flee into the mountains. They end up living in total isolation, hiding inside a barren cave. Just look at the devastating irony here. The man who stood next to Abraham looked out over the land and selfishly chose the most beautiful, fertile, economically promising valley, now ends up terrified, completely impoverished, and hiding in the dark. It is a stunning reversal of fortune brought about entirely by his own compromised choices. Which brings us to our final section, moral decline and today's lesson. Let's examine the disturbing conclusion of Lot's lineage to extract the practical value this ancient wisdom holds for us today. Look at Lot's beginning, wealthy, secure, traveling with faithful Abraham, managing abundant herds. And then look at Lot's end, impoverished, traumatized, living in a cave. And the story actually concludes with a really dark twist. His daughters, whose moral compasses were clearly corrupted by growing up in Sodom's culture, fear they'll never have families. So they get their father drunk and sleep with him to continue their lineage. From this deeply unethical act come 2 sons, Moab and Ammon. They become the fathers of the Moabite and Ammonite nations, which historically were some of the most bitter adversaries of Abraham's descendants. The toxic seed of Sodom kept bearing fruits long after the city was ashes. So, the crucial point is this. This isn't just an ancient historical record. It's a timeless blueprint of human behavior. Don't make life-altering decisions based purely on aesthetics or immediate financial gain while totally ignoring the moral realities. Remember the slow fade. Toxic environments corrupt us slowly, almost imperceptibly. We absolutely must heed early warnings before total destruction arrives. And perhaps most importantly, when you finally escape a toxic situation, don't look back. Your physical exit means nothing if your heart remains anchored to the toxicity. This ancient story forces us to look in the mirror. We all face these exact same crossroads. We all see those fertile, lush valleys that promise immediate success, but quietly demand subtle, gradual, ethical compromises. So, I'll leave you with this question to think about as we wrap up this explainer. Which beautiful but toxic choice are you currently refusing to walk away from? Are you pitching your tent a little too close to the edge? Thank you so much for joining me, and I challenge you to take a hard look at the Sodoms in your own life today.